And the Lord said through the prophet Isaiah, I will make to you a light to the nations. I will make you a light to the nations. My friends, on this Tuesday of the holiest week on our calendar, it may be important for us to take just a moment to truly understand what John is telling us in this gospel, to take a quick review of yesterday's gospel. Yesterday, Jesus too was at the dinner party. And at the table with him was Lazarus, a figure that we don't know that much about. And yet it was through Lazarus that you and I have been taught much. But before we hit upon that, about 7 or 8 years ago, I was transferred from a parish smack dab in the middle of downtown Boston to the wonderful parish that I'm the pastor of now. It isn't that far away. Maybe, I should have measured it, I think maybe 7, 8, 9 miles at the most, not too far away. But the parish that I'm referring to was in the middle of downtown Boston. Now, as most priests realize, when you get transferred, you don't lose contact with many of the people from the parish that you served. I still am in dialogue all the time with people from my first parish, my second parish, the parish that I'm speaking of now. And usually, when I go back to see a parishioner in my old parish in the middle of downtown Boston, I do take a direct route. It's kind of a thoroughfare that connects the two cities, and it goes by a lot of the very famous landmarks in the city of Boston and the city of Cambridge. And so I always know where I am, and I know the road quite well. I usually make the trek during the day. It's when I would have a couple of hours to go back to an old parish and visit someone. However, a few months ago, I was asked to see someone, and it was going to be at night, after the sun had gone down. I visited with this family, a mom and dad, a couple of kids. And at the end of the evening, I got in my car to drive back on this road that I've gone back and forth on for years. But I hadn't made the trek at night in a long while. I thank God for landmarks, because as I left their house, I got on the road, and obviously I knew where I was. I was leaving Government Center in downtown Boston. I drove by the famous Boston Pops Hatch Shell, by what we call the Esplanade, the Charles River. I kept driving and went by Harvard University and finally Harvard's football stadium. I got into the town where the seminary I attended was, and finally I got back to the city that I now live in. But if I hadn't had those landmarks, I would have been, well, my sense of direction is not always that good. I possibly could have gotten lost. Why? Because it was night. I was amazed. I hadn't made that trek at night for a long while. And it's very interesting. A road that you might travel on in the light all the time looks different at night. You can't quite see the same things that you see during the day. The road splitting further down the road might be a little darker at night than it is during the day. Things are different in the night. For the Gospel of John, day and night are very different. In the Gospel today, we hear that line after Judas has betrayed him, and it was night. That act of betrayal represented darkness. Now, the day before, we looked at Lazarus, who had been called out of darkness into light. Lazarus had been called away from death back to life. And Jesus shared with the crowd the words he uttered to Lazarus. Untie him. Let him go free. My friends, today, through the miracle of God's word, you and I are reminded that our lives are filled with moments of light and darkness. Our lives are filled with moments of daylight and nighttime. No matter where we stand, whether we're standing in the day or the night, Jesus is with us. He is, as Isaiah reminds us, a light to the nations. He is the light in our darkness, as St. John would want us to remember. During this holiest of weeks, you and I are reminded that no matter what kind of nighttime we might stand in, no matter what kind of darkness might try to invade our lives, Jesus is standing right by our side, giving us what we need when we need it, giving us the strength and the confidence that we need to forge ahead, to not only accept his light, but in some way to be that light to those around us.